The day started like any other ordinary Tuesday in the quiet town of Rosefield, where life moved slowly and secrets aged quietly behind lace curtains. Evelyn Moore, a 68-year-old retired literature teacher, woke to the faint hum of morning rain tapping gently against her bedroom window. The same rhythm she used to love when her husband, Richard, was alive. The rain had always made her feel safe, wrapped in the comfort of routine, of predictability. But lately, that comfort had been replaced by a constant, unexplainable unease. She couldn't name it, but she could feel it. The way the house seemed too quiet when she was alone. How her son Daniel and his wife Claire would pause their conversations when she entered the room, or how their smiles never quite reached their eyes anymore. It was as if something had shifted beneath the surface of her own home, a shadow crawling along the edges of her once peaceful life. Evelyn told herself she was being silly, perhaps just getting paranoid with age. But deep down, something in her gut whispered that the danger she feared wasn't imaginary. When the phone rang that morning, it startled her. It was Dr. James Porter's office, confirming her appointment. She had been seeing him for over 20 years, ever since Richard's passing. He was one of the few constants left in her life, a man she trusted implicitly. "Just a quick checkup, Mrs. Moore," the nurse said cheerfully, her tone casual, unaware that Evelyn's heart had already begun to race. Lately, Claire had been pushing her to schedule more doctor visits, insisting Evelyn was forgetting things, misplacing objects, or losing track of days. Each time, Evelyn brushed it off, but the suggestion always lingered. Her daughter-in-law's concerns sounded more like accusation than care. "She's trying to make me feel old," Evelyn thought bitterly as she dressed. Still, she couldn't ignore the small tremor in her hands as she buttoned her cardigan. Was she really losing her mind, or was someone trying to make her believe she was? The drive to the clinic was quiet. Daniel had taken her car keys weeks ago, saying it was safer for him to drive her around now. So she rode in the passenger seat as the world outside blurred by, rain streaking across the window like tears. "Don't worry, Mom," he said with a practiced smile, eyes fixed on the road. "Dr. Porter will take good care of you. Maybe he'll finally agree that you shouldn't be living alone anymore." Evelyn frowned. "I'm not alone, Daniel. You and Claire live with me." He chuckled softly, eyes fixed on the road. "That's temporary, Mom. You need professional help, a proper facility where people can watch you." The words hit her like cold water. "A facility?" she repeated, her voice trembling. "You mean a nursing home?" Daniel didn't answer. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. She turned her face toward the rain, blinking back tears. She had raised him with love, sacrifice, and patience. But the boy she once rocked to sleep now sounded like a stranger rehearsing lines he didn't fully believe. By the time they reached the clinic, Evelyn's nerves were raw. The waiting room smelt faintly of antiseptic and coffee. A young mother played with her toddler in the corner, while an elderly man coughed into his sleeve. Everything looked painfully normal, and yet the air around her felt wrong. Dr. Porter appeared in the doorway, his face pale, his posture stiff. "Mrs. Moore?" he greeted her softly, glancing once at Daniel. "Let's get you inside." Evelyn noticed the way his eyes darted toward her son, hesitant, wary. Inside the examination room, he closed the door quietly and gestured for her to sit. The usual warmth in his voice was gone. He took her vitals in silence, his hands trembling slightly as he wrapped the cuff around her arm. "How have you been feeling?" he asked finally. "Fine, just tired." He nodded, eyes not meeting hers. "Your blood pressure's perfect, heart strong. You're healthier than most women your age." Then his voice dropped to a whisper she barely caught. "That's good news. Very good news." When the exam ended, he moved toward the counter, scribbling something on a small piece of paper. Evelyn tried to see what it was, but he folded it quickly. Daniel knocked on the door from the outside. "Everything okay in there?" he called out, his tone too cheerful. Dr. Porter forced a smile. "Everything's fine," he replied loudly. Then, as he walked Evelyn to the door, he leaned close, so close she could smell the faint scent of coffee on his breath, and slipped the folded note into her hand. His eyes locked with hers, and for a brief moment, she saw something in them she had never seen before. Fear. Real human fear. "Take care, Mrs. Moore. And whatever happens, don't go home, please." Evelyn blinked, confused. Before she could ask, Daniel appeared beside her, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "Ready to go, Mom?" he asked, his smile stretched too tight. Dr. Porter nodded faintly, his jaw clenched. "You're in good health, Mrs. Moore. Just rest and avoid stress." Evelyn felt the note crumpled in her palm, its corners digging into her skin. As Daniel led her to the car, her mind spun in circles. What could the doctor possibly mean? Why shouldn't she go home? And why did he look as though he was terrified of her own son? The drive back was silent, the kind of silence that screamed. Evelyn stared out the window, her hand hidden in her lap, fingers gripping the secret message. The rain had stopped, but the sky hung heavy and gray, pressing down on her chest. Something inside her knew this day would not end like any other Tuesday. There was a reason the doctor's voice trembled, a reason he had looked at Daniel with such restrained dread. Whatever was waiting for her behind her front door wasn't family warmth. It was something darker. She didn't know yet that by nightfall, she would discover a truth so cruel it would change her life forever. But for now, all she had was a folded note, a doctor's warning, and a heart pounding against the rhythm of the storm. The ride home felt like a silent interrogation. Daniel drove without speaking, his jaw clenched, the rhythmic click of the turn signal echoing through the car like a metronome of dread. Evelyn clutched her purse tightly, feeling the crumpled note burning against her palm as though it were alive. The doctor's words kept replaying in her head. "Don't go home, run." Each repetition made her chest tighten. The man had been her family physician for 2 decades. He wasn't the type to play games. She wanted to open the note again, to check if she had imagined it, but Daniel's eyes flicked toward her every few seconds through the rearview mirror. He didn't speak, but his gaze made her skin crawl. When they pulled into the driveway, the familiar brick house looked different, colder, emptier, almost hostile. The curtains were drawn tight, and even through the rain-blurred glass, Evelyn felt watched. Inside, Claire stood at the kitchen counter, smiling too widely, stirring something in a pot that smelled faintly metallic. "You're home early," she said brightly. "Did the doctor say everything's okay?" Her tone was light, but her eyes darted quickly toward Daniel, then back to Evelyn. "He said I'm fine," Evelyn replied, quietly, hanging her coat. "Perfectly healthy." Claire's smile faltered for a split second, just enough for Evelyn to notice. "That's good," she said flatly, turning back to the stove. "Really good." Evelyn sat at the table watching Claire's back, noticing the way her shoulders stiffened as Daniel entered the room. They exchanged glances again, quick, coded, unreadable to anyone who didn't know them. But Evelyn knew. She'd taught literature for 40 years. She could read tone, body language, subtext, and every unspoken word screamed, "Something's wrong." When dinner was served, Evelyn barely touched her plate. Claire kept refilling her glass of water, but Evelyn pretended to sip, her stomach churning. "You're quiet tonight, Mom," Daniel said, trying to sound casual. "Doctor didn't find anything worrying, did he?" "Nothing at all," she said, forcing a smile. "He said I'm as sharp as ever." Silence stretched. Claire's fork clinked against her plate. Olivia, her 15-year-old granddaughter, looked up from her phone, eyes cold. "That's nice," the girl muttered. "Means you'll be around a while." The words were harmless on the surface, but the way she said them made her heart ache. What had they told her, she wondered? What poison had they planted in her mind? After dinner, Evelyn retreated to her bedroom. The rain had turned into a storm, thunder rolling through the night like distant warning drums. She locked the door, a small act of rebellion that made her feel foolish but oddly safe. Her hands shook as she unfolded the note again, reading the scrawled words under the lamplight. "Mrs. Moore, your son and daughter-in-law came to me yesterday. They asked me to sign papers declaring you mentally unfit. They want to have you admitted to a facility. I refused. They weren't happy. Don't go home. Run. Dr. Porter. Her breath caught. The room seemed to tilt. So it was true. Every whisper, every strange look, every forgetful accusation. It had all been part of a plan. Her own son, the child she had adopted, raised, loved, and protected from the world. Tears blurred her vision, but she couldn't afford to cry. She needed to think. She needed to act. Quickly. Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Daniel's voice came through the door. Calm and gentle. "Mom, you awake?" She froze. "Yes," she said, cautiously. "Just reading." "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow is going to be a big day." His tone carried something ominous beneath the softness. She listened as his footsteps receded, followed by the faint sound of the front door locking. She was trapped. Her mind raced. Why the lock? Did they think I wouldn't notice? Were they planning something tonight? Her instinct screamed run, but where would she go? Outside, the storm raged. The road slick and dark. The nearest neighbor was half a mile away, and Daniel still had her car keys. She scanned her room, searching for anything useful, a phone, cash, her late husband's old cell tucked in a drawer. It was dead, but she found the charger. As she plugged it in, her reflection caught in the mirror. Pale, trembling, but her eyes were sharp. The fear that had once consumed her now hardened into something else, resolute. A sudden creak from the hallway snapped her attention. The doorknob turned slightly, testing. Evelyn stepped back, holding her breath. "Claire?" she called softly. No answer. Then the sound of soft footsteps moving away. She waited several minutes before daring to breathe. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She checked the window. It was barely wide enough, but it would have to do. She quietly gathered her purse, the note, and her late husband's folder of documents, something Daniel didn't know she still had. Lightning flashed, illuminating the hallway outside as she opened the door. Empty, silent. Every instinct screamed at her to run, and she did. Down the hall, through the kitchen, past the pot of untouched soup still steaming faintly on the stove, and toward the back door. The rain hit her like needles, cold and punishing, but she didn't stop. She ran barefoot across the wet lawn, her nightgown clinging to her legs, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't look back until she reached the old oak tree by the road. When she did, she saw Daniel standing in the doorway, his silhouette framed by lightning, watching her. He didn't shout. He didn't chase her. He just watched, a faint, knowing smile on his face, as if he had expected her to run all along. That smile would haunt her forever. The storm followed Evelyn like a living creature, tearing at her hair and clothes as she stumbled through the dark. Mud clung to her feet, rain blinding her eyes, but she didn't stop. Her only thought was Dr. Porter. He was the only person who knew, the only person she could still trust. By the time she reached his neighborhood, her body was trembling from exhaustion. His house sat at the edge of town, lights still glowing faintly through the windows. Relief surged through her, almost painful in its intensity. She pounded on the door. "Dr. Porter, it's me, Evelyn." No answer. She knocked again, louder this time. "Please." The rain hammered down harder, wind howling like a chorus of voices, warning her to turn back. Just as she raised her fist again, the door creaked open on its own. A thin stream of warm light spilled out onto the porch. Evelyn hesitated, her instincts prickling. "Hello?" she called softly, stepping inside. The familiar smell of antiseptic and coffee hung in the air, but underneath it was something else. Metallic. Sharp. Her eyes adjusted slowly, revealing the overturned chair in the corner, the broken lamp, and the faint dark trail leading toward the kitchen. Her breath hitched. No! She followed the trail. Each step felt heavier, as though the floor were sinking beneath her feet. When she reached the kitchen, she stopped dead. Dr. Porter lay slumped over the table, eyes open, his white coat stained crimson. The note she had received from him was pinned to his chest with a surgical scalpel. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her ears nearly gave out. He had been murdered, and whoever did it wanted her to see. The room suddenly felt smaller, airless. Panic clawed at her throat. She backed away, trembling, until she bumped into something solid. She turned sharply. "Mrs. Moore," a calm voice said from the shadows. A man stepped forward, a tall figure in a dark raincoat, face half hidden by the brim of his hat. "Your son hired me. He said you'd been confused lately, that you might try to harm yourself." Evelyn stared at him, realization dawning slowly. "You're lying," she said. "You're not here to protect me. You're here to deliver me." The man sighed softly, almost regretfully. "Ma'am, please don't make this harder. Just come quietly." He took a step closer. Evelyn's gaze darted toward the back door. Too far. Her mind raced, until she noticed something glinting on the counter, Dr. Porter's old letter opener. She took a slow step back, feigning weakness. I don't understand. Why would Daniel do this?" The man hesitated long enough for her to grab the opener and thrust it forward. The blade grazed his arm. He cursed, grabbing at the wound, and Evelyn bolted through the hallway. "Stop her!" he shouted, his voice echoing after her. But she was already through the front door, sprinting into the storm once again. Her lungs burned, every breath slicing through her chest, but she didn't stop until she reached the old gas station on the main road. The lights flickered overhead, the air thick with the smell of oil and rain. She ducked behind a stack of crates, trying to steady her breathing. Her mind reeled. Dr. Porter was dead. The man in the raincoat worked for Daniel, which meant Daniel knew she was gone. She pulled out her husband's old phone. It had finished charging just enough for one call. Hands shaking, she dialed the only other number she could remember by heart. Detective Harris, her late husband's old friend. He'd retired years ago, but maybe, just maybe, he'd still help her. The phone rang twice before a gravelly voice answered. "Hello?" "Harris, it's Evelyn Moore," she whispered. "They're trying to kill me." There was silence on the other end. "Evelyn?" he said slowly. "Where are you?" She told him everything in broken gas. The note, the doctor, the man at the house. When she finished, there was another pause. "Listen to me," he said finally. "Don't go back home. They're after your property, the insurance, your estate. It's worth millions. They've been planning this. I heard whispers months ago, but didn't think it was true." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "What do I do?" she whispered. "I'm coming for you," Harris said. "Stay where you are. Don't talk to anyone." The call cut off. Evelyn stared at the phone, dread creeping back in. The line had gone dead, not disconnected, but cut. Someone else had been listening. Moments later, headlights appeared on the road, cutting through the rain. A black SUV slowed near the station, engine humming softly. Evelyn ducked lower, heart pounding. The passenger window rolled down and a flashlight beam swept the area. "Mrs. Moore, it's the police. Your son reported you missing." She almost laughed. Missing? That was clever. They were tightening the noose, wrapping the lie in authority. She waited until the SUV drove past, then slipped out the back of the gas station, keeping low. The town stretched ahead, dark and deserted. She knew she couldn't trust anyone, not the police, not her neighbors. Everyone around Daniel owed him something. For hours, she wandered through back alleys, guided only by flashes of lightning. Every shadow looked alive, every sound a threat. By the time she reached the old train yard, she could barely stand. She found shelter inside an abandoned freight car, curling up in a corner. Her soaked clothes clung to her skin, but the cold didn't matter anymore. Her mind was alive, sharp, racing through every memory, every conversation with Daniel and Claire, the odd glances, the sudden generosity, the way they'd taken over managing her finances after her husband died. It all made sense now. She had been too trusting, too blind, but not anymore. As she stared into the darkness, something hardened inside her. She wasn't just going to survive. She was going to make them pay. For Dr. Porter, for her husband, for every lie, every act of betrayal. They thought she was weak. They thought they could erase her quietly. They were wrong. Evelyn Moore was done running. Evelyn spent the night curled on a scrap of oily cardboard in the freight car, listening to the rain tattoo the metal roof and rehearsing every moment that had led her here. Dawn crawled in gray and thin, and with it came a brittle clarity. Running was temporary. The only way to make the danger stop was to expose it. She had to gather proof, something concrete that would undo the years they had spent rewriting her life. She thought of Dr. Porter's hand, the way his eyes had pleaded. She thought of the pinned note and the scalpel. She thought of the crooked smile Daniel had shown her in the doorway. There would be no more trusting, no more waiting for someone else to save her. She would be the architect of their ruin. First, she needed money and a safe place. In the bottom of her purse, tucked behind a faded photograph of Richard, she found a list of obscure P.O. boxes, old things Richard had arranged for strange contingencies years before. One of them held a key to a safety deposit box at the tiny bank in Rosefield that privileged people rarely used anymore. It was enough to get her started. She flagged down a battered cab with an old driver who did not ask questions. Men like him were valuable in small towns, silent and dependable. She pretended to be disoriented, an elderly widow wandering back from a late-night confusion. He drove her to the bank without comment and waited patiently in the car. The bank smelled of dust and paper, a place that time had forgotten. Evelyn used Richard's old key, hand steady now, a practiced calm settling over her, and opened the safety deposit box. Inside were deeds, a ledger, and a small stack of old letters between her husband and an attorney. She took everything, carefully scanning each sheet. In the ledger were transactions she had never seen, transfers that pointed to an offshore trust created in Richard's name just months before he died. Her pulse quickened. Why had he done this? Had he suspected Daniel and Claire? The letters answered half of it. Richard had been worried about their son's friends, about people he called opportunists, and he had quietly moved assets into a trust that only a named beneficiary, oddly not Daniel, could access under certain conditions. The letters were deliberate, precise, and bitter. Richard had hidden more than money. He had hidden a key that would unravel the web Daniel had spun. Evelyn walked out of the bank with the evidence taped to her chest like armor. She felt smaller in the early light, but inside, a furnace of purpose burned. Next, she needed allies she could trust. Detective Harris had cut his retirement short when she'd called, but she couldn't rely on him wholly. Someone had intercepted the line. She remembered an old colleague from the school district, Morris Singh, who had moved to the city but kept one small apartment in town for weekends. Mara was blunt, sharp, and owed Richard a favor from decades ago. She found her at a chipped cafe table reading a newspaper, a cup of black coffee steaming beside her. When Evelyn produced the deeds and letters, Mara's expression changed from curiosity to stone-cold concern. Without a word, she led Evelyn to the back of the cafe, shutting the door on prying ears. "We'll need digital proof," Mara said, practical and merciless. "Phone records, bank transfers, anything that links them to the lawyer and the forged signatures." Evelyn nodded. She told Mara about the private security man, the black SUV, and the man with the raincoat. Her fingers tapped rapidly across a small tablet she produced from her bag, as if she'd been waiting for a mystery to solve all her life. Within hours, they had traced a paper trail, a shell company registered under a relative's name, payments to an estate lawyer, emergency calls booked under Daniel's phone number to fake caregivers. The more they dug, the clearer the picture became. Daniel and Claire had spent months building a case, contacts with medical staff, a lawyer willing to forge signatures, and a network of small lies designed to make Evelyn appear unstable. They had assumed kindness would keep her blind. They had miscalculated. Armed with documents and preliminary digital forensics, Evelyn felt something dangerous and gleeful unfurl inside her. The old, gentle woman the town remembered was a mask. Underneath, she had always been cunning in the way of someone who keeps secrets in letters and safety deposit boxes. She began to plan a counterattack that was as psychological as it was legal. If they wanted to portray her as delusional, she would show them a version of herself that looked fragile until she struck. She would bait Daniel and Claire into thinking the threat had passed. Then she would deliver the proof publicly in a way that would ruin reputations, and free money would not help them buy silence. She wanted humiliation, exposure, and the slow collapse of their scheme. The first step was to draw them out. She called Daniel's number once, sounding weak and distracted, letting the conversation be brief and careless. She pretended confusion when Daniel stopped by the small apartment to check on her, making a show of forgetting what day it was and misplacing a teacup on purpose. Their reaction was instantaneous, relief visible even through the thin whispers I could hear as they retreated to their car. They believed she was back under their control. They believed her frightened, small, and manageable. The trap was cocked. Evelyn also began to leak small truths to the town in whispers, to the few who would listen. A rumor here about Daniel's gambling, a casual mention there about Claire's sudden lifestyle changes. In small towns, gossip is an accelerant. Once set on fire, it spreads. But she didn't spread enough to be obvious. It needed to look organic. Neighbors' curiosity, not Evelyn's machinations. Meanwhile, Detective Harris, back in touch, quietly placed a trace on Daniel's account and alerted a cautious, discreet county investigator who owed him a favor. They arranged for a controlled meeting. An estate lawyer, an honest one, would discuss the settlement in a public library room with witnesses present. Evelyn would plan to be there, fragile and silent, and then to unleash everything. That night, she sat alone with the letters and the ledger and began to write a new will, one that mirrored Richard's last wishes, but with an unalterable twist. She would make a public declaration, notarized and witnessed, that her assets were not to pass to Daniel without judicial oversight. She sent encrypted copies of Dr. Porter's note, the ledger, and the digital proof to Mara and Harris. Then, for theater, she planted a small, deliberate item where Daniel could find it. An old photograph of Richard and Evelyn with a scribbled note on the back. He knew. He left a map. It was the kind of breadcrumb that would feed the family's paranoia and make them move rashly. In the quiet that followed, as the town slept and rain washed the streets clean again, Evelyn felt less like an old woman and more like a chess player setting pieces for a final devastating checkmate. She had escaped the first round, but the war was only beginning.
The next morning broke with a deceptive calm. Sunlight slanted through thin curtains, dust motes floating lazily in the air, and for a moment, Evelyn almost forgot the storm that hovered over her life. But as she watched the light shift across the old table, her mind clicked into place like a lock finding its key. This was the day she would start the game in earnest. Every move from here would be deliberate. Every word would be a weapon. Her first call was to Daniel. She let the phone ring until the last second before he picked up, his tone syrupy and cautious. "Mom, where have you been? We've been worried sick." Evelyn forced her voice into the trembling softness of an elderly woman unsure of her own memory. "Oh, Daniel, I think I got confused last night. I ended up at the old libraries somehow." She let out a nervous laugh. "Can you come by later? I think I'm losing track of time." There was a pause. long enough for her to hear the suspicion flicker behind his practiced concern. "Of course, Mom. I'll come with Claire this evening." He hung up before she could respond. Evelyn smiled coldly. "Good. Come to me." By noon, she was pacing the apartment. Mara sat cross-legged on the sofa, laptop open, eyes scanning lines of code. "They're moving money again," she muttered. "Daniel just transferred a large sum from his joint account to a holding company in Delaware. He's preparing for a cash drain. He knows something's coming." Evelyn stopped pacing. Let him move it. When the time comes, the trail will hang him. Harris had called an hour earlier, confirming that the county investigator had agreed to monitor the estate. Everything was aligning, but Evelyn knew one mistake could shatter it all. She couldn't afford fear, not now. As the afternoon stretched, Evelyn prepared the stage. She set the old ledger on the kitchen table beside a half-finished cup of tea and scattered some of her late husband's medical records for effect. To anyone walking in, it would look like the clutter of a confused widow sorting through memories. But beneath the mess, a small voice recorder blinked red, hidden under a lace cloth. She wanted Daniel's words. His arrogance would betray him faster than any proof she could offer. When evening came, a soft knock echoed through the apartment. Evelyn opened the door to find Daniel standing tall in a crisp gray suit, Claire a step behind in her usual polished perfection. "Mom," Daniel said, his smile wide and false. "You look tired." Claire placed her hand on his arm. "We've been worried so much," she added, her tone soaked in feigned warmth. Evelyn lowered her eyes, letting them see what they wanted: frailty, confusion, surrender. "Come in," she whispered. The moment they stepped inside, the atmosphere changed. Claire's eyes darted around, noting every object. Daniel hovered near the table, glancing at the ledger. "What's this?" he asked casually. "Just your father's old papers. I've been trying to make sense of them." He picked one up, squinting at the faded ink. "Mom, you shouldn't stress yourself with this stuff. Why don't you let me handle it? I'll call Mr. Lyle tomorrow. He can sort everything for you." Evelyn's heart thudded. Mr. Lyle? Their lawyer? The one forging documents? She feigned gratitude. "Oh, that would be nice, dear. I'm so forgetful lately." Claire drifted toward the window, pretending to tidy the curtain, but clearly scanning for signs of intrusion. "You didn't tell anyone where you were last night, did you? We were so scared when we couldn't find you." Evelyn gave a small laugh. "Oh, I barely remember. I think I stopped at the church for a bit." She saw the tension leave Claire's shoulders, replaced with smug satisfaction. Good, Evelyn thought. Let them believe they're in control. Daniel moved closer, his tone dropping. "Mom, we've been talking. You know this house is too big for you. You need proper care." Evelyn kept her voice small. "Are you saying you want to send me away?" He smiled, a slow, reptilian curl of his lips. "Not away, Mom. Somewhere safe. Somewhere people can look after you." His words dripped with mock compassion, but his eyes gleamed with greed. Claire chimed in smoothly. "We found a wonderful facility near the lake. Private suites, full staff. You'll love it there." Evelyn looked between them, letting a tear form at the corner of her eye. "You really think I need that?" "Of course," Daniel said quickly. "It's for your own good." For several minutes, they continued their gentle charade, soothing tones, false reassurances, while the recorder captured every syllable. Then Evelyn, still trembling, leaned closer. "Daniel," she whispered, "if I go there, who will handle the estate?" He hesitated. Claire answered instead. "Daniel will, of course, until you're ready to come home." Evelyn nodded weakly. "Yes, that makes sense." Inside, her fury burned cold and precise. Suddenly, she stood, wobbling a little for effect. She said, "I should get my coat. It's in the other room." She left them alone just long enough to retrieve a small envelope from the dresser, the letters from Richard, and a duplicate of the ledger's most damning page.
She slipped them into Claire's purse on her way back, careful not to be seen. When Claire discovered them later, panic would set in. Suspicion would follow. They would turn on each other before the night was over. Evelyn returned with her coat, smiling faintly. "It's chilly tonight." Daniel checked his watch. "We'll come by tomorrow morning to take you to the facility. Pack a few things." Claire nodded, already picturing the inheritance in her mind. Evelyn clasped Daniel's hand, the way a mother would. "You've always known what's best for me," she said softly. He squeezed her fingers, oblivious to the venom in her smile. When they finally left, Evelyn waited until their car disappeared around the corner before collapsing against the door. Her hands trembled, not from fear this time, but from adrenaline. The recorder blinked steadily, every damning word saved. She played back the tape once, just to hear Daniel's smooth lies and Claire's cold calculation. The evidence was perfect. But what she didn't know was that Daniel, too, had left something behind. A small tracker slipped under the table. Across town, in the car, Daniel stared at the signal glowing on his phone screen. "She's lying," he muttered. "She's hiding something." Claire frowned. "You think she knows?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "She's not as senile as she acts. Tomorrow, we end this." Back in the apartment, Evelyn stood at the window watching the lights fade into darkness. She knew the tracker was there. Mara had warned her such tricks were likely. Let them think they're winning. Tomorrow, she would lead them exactly where she wanted. And when the truth came out, the world would see them for what they were. For the first time in weeks, Evelyn allowed herself a slow, deliberate smile. The storm had returned, rolling across the horizon in low growls of thunder. But she was no longer running from it. She was the one calling it back. The wind howled outside like an omen, rattling the old window panes of Evelyn's apartment. Sleep never came that night. She sat by the table with the recorder, headphones pressed to her ears, listening again and again to Daniel's voice. Each lie was a blade, each false word a reminder of how deep their betrayal ran. But it wasn't pain she felt anymore. It was focus. Every second of audio was a chess piece, and by morning she intended to move her queen. At dawn, the rain began again, soft and relentless. Mara arrived just as the sky turned gray, her coat dripping and laptop in hand. "They're watching the apartment," she said, pulling the curtains closed. "That tracker under your table is transmitting to Daniel's car. He's been parked a few blocks away since midnight." Eveline's lips curved into a thin smile. "Perfect," she whispered. "Let's give him something worth watching." They spent the next hour setting the stage. Evelyn packed 2 small suitcases with random clothes and family photos. Nothing valuable, just enough to look convincing. Mara hid the recorder's files in a hidden cloud drive, triple encrypted, and slipped a backup USB into the hem of Evelyn's coat. Then she wired a small device under the table where Daniel's tracker sat, a loop transmitter that would replay the same location signal for hours, even after Evelyn left. It was a trick she'd learned from an old journalist contact. When Daniel checked his tracker later, it would appear as if Evelyn were still sitting quietly at home, right where he wanted her. "Once I'm gone," Evelyn said, tightening her scarf, "he'll believe I've given up. He'll come to clean up whatever he thinks I'm hiding." Mara frowned, and when he does, Evelyn's gaze turned to steel. "He'll find exactly what I want him to." Before leaving, Evelyn placed a new note on the kitchen table, written in her shaky handwriting and deliberately melodramatic. "Daniel, I'm tired of running. I'll go with you tomorrow. Please don't be angry. Mom." It was bait, drenched in vulnerability. The kind of note that would disarm him, make him careless. She slipped out through the back alley just after sunrise, pulling her hood low. The storm masked her footsteps as she disappeared into the waking city. Her destination was the library on Old Willow Street, the one she'd mentioned to Daniel the previous day. It was a place of childhood memories and quiet corners, a perfect stage for what was about to unfold. Detective Harris met her there, his old trench coat damp from Maine, eyes weary but alert. "You sure about this?" he asked as she handed him the USB with the recordings. "Once this starts, you can't undo it." Evelyn nodded firmly. "They took everything from me, my trust, my peace, my husband's legacy. I won't let them take my name." Harris sighed, sliding the drive into his pocket. "Then let's finish this." He made a few calls from a burner phone, one to the county investigator, another to a journalist at the Herald who'd been investigating elder financial abuse cases. Within an hour, the stage was set. All they needed was for Daniel to make his move. Back at the apartment, the tracker signal blinked steady, looping on repeat. Daniel sat in his parked car, watching it through narrowed eyes. "She hasn't moved in hours," he muttered. "Good." Claire replied, her voice tight with irritation. "Let's go end this. If she signed that letter, we can move her tonight." Daniel started the car. No more waiting. The couple arrived at the apartment mid-afternoon, umbrellas snapping in the wind. Daniel unlocked the door with a spare key and stepped inside, the smell of lavender and rainwater hanging in the air. The note on the table caught his eye instantly. "She left this," Claire said, reading it aloud. "She's going willingly tomorrow." Daniel smirked. Finally. But as he moved deeper into the room, something in the air felt wrong. Too still, too quiet. Then from under the table, the faint hum of the loop transmitter faltered, repeating the same signal glitch. "What's that?" Claire asked. Daniel frowned, crouching to look beneath the table. The tracker was there, but a second device blinked beside it. Something unfamiliar. The moment he touched it, a small red light flickered on the wall camera across the room. Evelyn's camera, the one Mara had set to record remotely. Daniel's face twisted in confusion. Then realization. "She set us up," he hissed. "She's recording us." Claire's eyes went wide. "What do we do?" Daniel stood up. "We destroy everything, tear this place apart." They didn't notice the unmarked car pulling up across the street, and the figure with the camera stepping out quietly. Detective Harris, documenting every frantic movement from the shadows. As Daniel and Claire tore through the apartment, cursing, the trap tightened. They found the open ledger, the transfers, and the letters. "She knew," Claire said, voice trembling. "She knew about the trust?" Daniel's anger turned sharp and reckless. "Then we take it anyway. If she goes to the police, we'll say she's lost her mind. We'll tell them she forged it herself." Claire hesitated. "What about that doctor, Porter? He was supposed to stay quiet." "He didn't, did he?" Her voice dropped. Harris caught every word. He pressed the comm in his ear. "Get ready. They're admitting it." The investigator's voice crackled on the other end. "Copy that." Meanwhile, across town, Evelyn and Mara sat in the library's back room watching the live feed on a small tablet. Daniel's fury filled the screen, every confession a nail in his own coffin. Evelyn's hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of justice inching closer. Mara looked at her. "You did it," she whispered. "They're burying themselves." But her expression remained somber. "Not yet," she said. "They still think they can win. I want them to feel the fall." Moments later, Daniel's phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. He opened it. It was a photo. Dr. Porter's office, the blood-stained note visible under the scalpel. Beneath it, a single line. "Run, Daniel, run." Claire gasped. "Who sent that?" Daniel's face went pale. "She's alive. She's playing with us." Panic rippled through him. He grabbed his keys and stormed off, Claire following in confusion. As their car sped off into the storm, Harris followed at a distance. The route Daniel took was straight toward the old estate, Evelyn's property, the one they had planned to seize. They didn't know it yet, but the county investigator and 2 patrol cars were already waiting at the gates, warrants in hand. At the library, Evelyn finally allowed herself to exhale. "He's going back to where it started," she said softly. Mara smiled grimly. "And where it'll end." Outside, the thunder roared louder, like applause for a play nearing its climax. Evelyn watched through the rain-streaked window. Her reflection split between shadow and light. The fear that once ruled her had burned away, leaving only resolve. Her family thought they had orchestrated a perfect betrayal, but by the time the storm passed, they would learn that the woman they tried to erase had already written their ending. And this time, she would be the one holding the pen. The rain was relentless by the time Daniel's car reached the estate. The old mansion loomed like a memory he wished he could forget, its tall iron gates shivering in the wind, the driveway slick with rainwater that reflected the lightning above. For a moment, Daniel just sat there, staring at the place that had once belonged to Evelyn's late husband, now his golden ticket. Claire shifted uneasily in the passenger seat. "Why here, Daniel? Why come back?" He didn't answer immediately. His eyes stayed locked on the gate, jaw tight. "Because if she's alive, this is where she'll come to end it." They stepped out of the car, rain soaking through their coats instantly. The Mel gate creaked open. Someone had unlocked it. Claire hesitated. "Daniel, maybe we should wait." But he was already walking forward, boots splashing in the puddles, his flashlight cutting through the dark. The mansion stood ahead, its windows like watching eyes. Inside, the air was cold and thick with dust. The smell of old wood and mold wrapped around them as they stepped into the grand hall. Furniture stood covered in white sheets like ghosts frozen in mid-motion. The sound of dripping water echoed somewhere deep in the house. "She hasn't been here in years," Claire whispered. "Look at this place." Daniel's flashlight caught something on the floor, muddy footprints, fresh. He crouched down, tracing them with his fingers. "She's here," he murmured. His pulse quickened. They followed the footprints through the corridor, past the family portraits that lined the walls. Evelyn's face appeared again and again, young, smiling, her eyes alive with trust. Claire felt a chill. "You should have left her alone," she muttered. Daniel ignored her. They reached the study, the heart of the mansion. The door stood ajar, a dim light flickering inside. Daniel pushed it open slowly. The room was empty, except for a single object on the desk, a small box wrapped in the same hospital notepaper Dr. Porter had used. The handwriting was unmistakable. "Open me." Daniel hesitated, then flipped the lid. Inside was a USB drive and a folded photograph. He lifted the photo. It was of him and Claire, taken secretly in the hospital parking lot the night before. His heart stopped. "She was there," Claire whispered. "She saw us." Daniel plugged the USB into his laptop, hands shaking. A video began to play, grainy security footage from Evelyn's apartment. His voice filled the room. "She set us up. She's recording us." Followed by their argument, every incriminating word preserved. Daniel's stomach turned. How did she get this?" he stammered. Before Claire could answer, a low voice came from the doorway. "Because I wanted you to." They turned. Evelyn stood there, rain dripping from her coat, her eyes hollow but blazing. In her hand she held her phone, its red light blinking. "Smile," she said softly. "You're live." Daniel froze. "Evelyn, listen to me." "No," she cut him off, stepping forward. "You listen." "For years I thought I was losing my mind, thought grief was turning me paranoid, but it wasn't grief. It was you." Her voice grew sharper with every word. "You drugged me. You stole from me. You used my husband's death as an excuse to dig into my life. And when you realized I was getting close, you tried to silence me. You made me doubt my own sanity." Claire swallowed hard, her eyes darting between them. "Evelyn, we didn't—" "Stop lying," Evelyn snapped. "I heard everything, every word, every plan. Even the night you told him you wished I'd just disappear." Daniel's composure cracked. "You don't understand. You're going to ruin everything. The estate, the company, none of it was yours. You weren't fit to handle it. We—" Evelyn laughed bitterly. "You decided that for me. You thought I'd just fade away, like some old ghost in your way?" Lightning flashed through the windows, throwing their faces into stark relief. Daniel took a step forward, trying to regain control. "You're making a mistake, Evelyn. You have no proof that'll stand in court. That recording won't mean anything." Evelyn smiled coldly. "You're right. Maybe it won't." She lifted her phone, showing a live stream interface. "But you're not the only one watching. Half the city's press is tuned in right now. Detective Harris sent them the link 15 minutes ago." Claire gasped. "You're bluffing." Evelyn tilted her head. "Try me." Daniel's face drained of color. He lunged toward her, but before he could reach her, the sound of sirens echoed outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, reflecting off the rain. Evelyn didn't flinch. She just watched him, calm and unblinking, as his world collapsed around him. "Do you know what the worst part was, Daniel?" she said quietly. "I still believed you loved me, even after all of it." The front doors burst open. Officers stormed in, guns raised. "Hands where we can see them." Daniel froze, eyes wild. Claire started crying, backing away. Harris entered last, rain dripping from his hat. "It's over," he said flatly. "We've got everything." Daniel's expression twisted, rage, disbelief, desperation all at once. "You think this is justice? You think you've won?" Evelyn met his gaze. "No, this isn't winning. This is ending." He lunged again, but before he could reach her, an officer tackled him before he could reach her. Claire screamed as he hit the floor, shouting curses. Evelyn didn't move. She just watched him silently as they cuffed him, her heartbeat steady for the first time in months. When Daniel and Claire were led outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle. The chaos faded, replaced by the low hum of police radios and the distant wail of thunder. Harris approached Evelyn, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's done," he said quietly. "They won't hurt anyone again." Evelyn nodded slowly. "I know, but it doesn't feel over yet." Harris gave her a look. "You did what you had to do. You turned their game against them." Evelyn's eyes lingered on the broken doorway. Sometimes justice doesn't feel like winning. It just feels necessary. As the officers drove away with Daniel and Claire, Evelyn stepped outside into the rain. The storm had begun to pass, but the sky still glowed with the ghost of lightning. She stood at the gate, watching the flashing lights disappear down the road. Then she looked back at the mansion, her home, her prison, her battlefield. She whispered under her breath, "It's mine again." And somewhere deep inside, for the first time in years, Evelyn felt something close to peace. But as she turned to leave, her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. It was a single image. Dr. Porter's office again, the desk empty this time, and a new note left in the center. It read, "You're not done yet." The message froze Evelyn where she stood. Rainwater dripped from her hair as she stared at the glowing screen, her pulse thundering in her ears. "You're not done yet." The words were simple, but the meaning was suffocating. She just exposed Daniel and Claire to the world. What could possibly be left? Was this someone's cruel joke, or was the nightmare still unfolding? She opened the image again, zooming in on the details. The photo had been taken from a strange angle, high above Dr. Porter's desk, almost like from a hidden camera. The note sat right where she'd seen the doctor slip the original one weeks ago, but something new caught her eye this time. In the corner of the desk, faint but visible, was a reflection of a person in the glass cabinet, a tall man in a dark coat. Her throat tightened. "No," she whispered. "He's dead." She looked around the empty mansion, half expecting someone to step out from the shadows, but there was only silence, heavy and sharp. Her phone buzzed again, another message. This time a voice recording. It began with static, then a whisper. "Evelyn, it's not over. He was never who you thought he was." Her hand trembled as she replayed it, straining to recognize the voice. It wasn't Daniel, not Claire, not anyone she knew. But there was something eerily familiar about the tone, controlled, professional, like someone used to giving orders. Detective Harris. Her stomach turned. She hadn't seen him leave the mansion. She tried calling him, but the line went straight to voicemail. No answer. The sirens were long gone now, their echoes swallowed by the storm. Evelyn went inside, bolting the door. Her heart refused to slow down. She replayed every conversation she'd had with Harris, every strange look, every time he'd shown up before she even called him, the way he'd always seemed to know where to find her. Her mind raced back to the hospital, how easily he'd gotten access to her records, how the nurse had said he's been here before. Had Harris been involved all along? A cold dread settled in her chest. Maybe Daniel and Claire hadn't been acting alone. She went to her study, the one room in the mansion that still felt like hers. She opened her laptop and inserted the same USB Evelyn had found earlier. She hadn't explored all its contents. Alongside the recording of Daniel and Claire, there was a folder titled Legacy. Inside were dozens of encrypted files, some dating back to years before her husband's death. Most were labeled with dates, initials, and cryptic codes. One caught her attention, PH_2015. She clicked it open. The screen filled with scanned documents, financial reports, offshore transfers, signed statements, and names. Her husband's, Daniel's, Claire's, and Detective Harris. Her breath caught. Harris's name appeared beside a series of large transactions, money funneled through her husband's medical foundation to a private security firm. The signatures were genuine. Her husband had paid Harris years before he died. She scrolled faster, her pulse roaring in her ears. Buried at the bottom of the file was a report labeled Project Haven. The text was dense, filled with legal jargon and medical terminology, but one line made her blood run cold. Primary asset, Evelyn Moore. Status, subject, unaware. Monitoring, ongoing. She pushed back from the desk, the chair screeching against the floor. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. A sudden knock echoed through the mansion. Evelyn froze. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Then silence. Her instinct screamed run, but there was nowhere left to go. She picked up her phone, ready to call 911, but before she could dial, a voice came from the other side of the door. Calm. Familiar. "Evelyn, it's Harris. Open up. We need to talk." Her breath hitched, the sound of his voice too calm, too deliberate. She glanced at the USB still in her laptop. If Harris truly was involved, he couldn't know she'd seen it. She quickly yanked the drive out and hid it under a floorboard. Then she opened the door, forcing a shaky smile. "Harris," she said, trying to sound relieved. "I scared me." He stood there in his trench coat, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. But something about his eyes was different. Colder. Unreadable. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "You shouldn't have come back here alone," he said flatly. "I thought it was over," she replied, studying him. "So did I," he murmured. His gaze swept across the room. "I just got a call. The department never received the live stream you claimed to send. There's no record of it. No media coverage, no arrests." Evelyn's heart skipped. "What do you mean? I saw them take Daniel away." Harris turned toward her slowly. "No, Evelyn. You thought you did." The room spun. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. "That's impossible. Sit down," he ordered. His tone left no room for argument. She obeyed, her mind racing. He walked closer, lowering his voice. "You've stumbled into something much bigger than family greed. Daniel and Claire were pawns. There's a reason your husband's estate was targeted, and a reason Dr. Porter tried to protect you." She frowned, her voice barely a whisper. "Protect me from what?" Harris leaned forward, pulling a small device from his coat pocket. It looked like a scanner. You've had unexplained memory lapses, haven't you? Blackouts, nightmares that feel too real. Her breath caught. She had, ever since her husband's death. Harris switched on the device. A faint blue light pulsed. They've been monitoring you. Every reaction, every decision. Porter was one of the few who tried to pull you out of it. That's why he died. Her body trembled. Why tell me this now? Because, he said, eyes narrowing, I need what's inside your head. Her pulse exploded. She understood now. The message, the note, everything. Porter knew the truth, and Harris silenced him. As Harris took a step closer, she reached under the table, pressing the hidden switch she'd installed earlier, the panic trigger linked to the USB's failsafe. A faint click echoed from the floorboard. Harris paused. What did you just do? Evelyn met his gaze, her fear replaced by something sharper. Finishing what the doctor started. The mansion lights flickered as Harris spun around as every monitor in the study lit up. Videos, files, documents from the USB, all streaming directly to multiple online feeds. You wanted what's in my head? She said coldly. Now the whole world gets to see it. Harris lunged forward, but she swung the heavy glass paperweight straight into his temple. He collapsed, dazed, as alarms blared through the mansion. Evelyn grabbed her coat, her breath ragged, but straightened. Goodbye, detective, she whispered. As she walked out into the storm, the mansion behind her glowed with the light of thousands of files uploading into the world. Evelyn didn't look back. She didn't need to. Some secrets were meant to be buried. Others, to burn everything that hid them. The rain had eased into a fine mist by the time Evelyn reached the edge of town, her headlights cutting a trembling path through the fog. The clock on the dashboard blinked 3:17 a.m. She'd been driving for hours, yet her thoughts ran even faster. Every image from the night replayed in her head like a fever dream. Harris's cold eyes, the flickering monitors, the files revealing her husband's deception. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel, not from fear anymore, but from the weight of knowing everything she believed about her life was a carefully crafted lie. She pulled into an abandoned gas station off the highway, its flickering neon sign casting a sickly red glow across her windshield. The place was empty, except for the hum of a vending machine and the distant croak of frogs. She killed the engine and sat in silence, trying to steady her breathing. The storm had passed, but the air still carried that heavy electric charge, the kind that comes before something even worse. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Unknown number again. You did it. The files are live. But you need to disappear. They'll come for you next. Evelyn's throat heightened. Whoever was behind these messages, they'd been watching her the entire time. Who are you? She typed back. Her screen blinked for a long moment before a response appeared. Someone who was in Project Haven, too. Her breath caught. Someone else? She quickly typed again. What is Project Haven? What did they do to me? Meet me before sunrise. Old train yard outside Brookfall. Bring nothing digital. The message vanished seconds after sending, self-deleting. Her chest rose and fell sharply. It could be a trap, but then again, everything tonight had been a trap, and she'd survived them all. She couldn't stop now. She left the car behind, grabbing only a flashlight and her father's old revolver, the one her husband had always told her to keep just in case. The irony almost made her laugh. The train yard sat on the outskirts of the city, swallowed by mist and silence. Rusted freight cars stood like corpses under the moonlight, their metal skin streaked with rain. Evelyn moved carefully, her boots crunching over gravel. Every sound seemed amplified. Her breath, the whistle of wind through the steel beams, the faint drip of water echoing somewhere in the distance. Evelyn Moore, a voice whispered from the shadows. She spun around, flashlight slicing through the dark, and froze. A man stepped forward, hands raised, his coat soaked through. He looked to be in his 50s, his face tired, eyes bloodshot but alert. "My name's Richard Hale. I worked for your husband. I helped build Project Haven." Evelyn gripped the revolver tighter. "Start talking." He nodded slowly. Project Haven was designed as a neurological preservation program. Officially, it was supposed to help patients with memory loss, mapping their neural patterns to store them digitally. But underneath, it was an experiment in behavioral control. "Control?" she repeated. "Yes," he said grimly. "Your husband and Dr. Porter used volunteers, people with certain psychological profiles, trauma, grief, dependency. They found you after your car accident, when you had mild amnesia. You were perfect for it. They wanted to see how far they could guide human memory, alter perception through subtle triggers." Evelyn felt her knees weaken. "You're lying. My husband loved me." Richard's expression didn't change. "He did love you, but not the way you think. You were his masterpiece, Evelyn. Every decision you've made, every emotion, has been carefully observed, recorded, and adjusted through chemical therapy and suggestion. Harris was part of that. He was one of the field operatives monitoring subject behavior post-loss." Her mind reeled. "You're telling me I've been someone's experiment for 20 years? He hesitated. "Not someone's, everyone's. After your husband's death, the project shifted to you. The others wanted to know how grief changes human control thresholds. You were their case study." Evelyn backed away, shaking her head. No, that's not possible. I remember." "Do you? Or do you remember what they wanted you to?" Silence fell. For a moment, Evelyn could only hear her heartbeat, erratic, angry, disbelieving. She looked down at the revolver, at her trembling hands. "If what you're saying is true," she said slowly, "then why help me now?" Richard looked away. "Because I was one of them, and I can't live with what we did. Porter tried to shut it down when he realized the extent of the manipulation. Harris killed him for it. But before he died, Porter sent me copies of everything, including one final recording meant for you." He reached into his coat and handed her a small flash drive sealed in a waterproof bag. "He wanted you to know the truth, Evelyn. All of it." Evelyn hesitated, staring at the drive as if it were a snake. "And what happens after I listen to this?" Richard sighed. "After this, you'll understand why you can't ever go back. They won't stop hunting you until they erase every trace of what you are or what you've become." A sound echoed across the train yard, the low crunch of tires on gravel. Both of them turned. Headlights cut through the fog, illuminating the tracks. Evelyn's blood ran cold. Black SUVs, 3 of them, speeding toward them without lights, engines humming low and deadly. "Run!" Richard shouted, grabbing her arm. They sprinted between the freight cars as gunfire shattered the quiet. Bullets sparked against steel, echoing like thunderclaps. Evelyn's lungs burned as she ducked behind a rusted tanker, heart pounding in her throat. Richard pulled a pistol from his belt and fired back, but he was outnumbered. "They found us too fast. They're tracking the file you uploaded." Evelyn crawled toward a broken hatch in the tanker, clutching the flash drive. "Then we destroy it." "No," he said firmly. "It's not just data. It's you. The project's core is built on your neural template. If they lose that, they lose everything." She stared at him, realizing what that meant. "Then I'm the target." He nodded grimly. "And the key." A sound echoed across the train yard, the low crunch of tires on gravel. Evelyn stumbled through the forest, every branch clawing at her soaked clothes, every breath a struggle against the cold air biting her lungs. The faint hum of engines faded behind her, replaced by the whisper of rain falling through the leaves. She had no idea where she was heading, only that she needed to keep moving. Her fingers clenched around the flash drive like it was the only thing keeping her alive. She found shelter beneath a half-collapsed wooden cabin, its roof sagging and walls green with moss. Inside, it smelled of rot and smoke, but it was dry. She dropped to her knees, shaking, then pulled out her flashlight and the flash drive. There was no computer, nothing electronic, but she remembered the old satellite radio in the corner. Maybe it still worked. She brushed off the dust and twisted the knobs until a faint light flickered to life. Static filled the air. Then, suddenly, a voice. Evelyn. She froze. The voice was unmistakable. Her husband. Her breath caught in her throat. The transmission was faint, distorted, but it was him. If you're hearing this, then everything I tried to protect you from has already begun. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. She pressed closer, her heart pounding. I need you to understand that what I did, wasn't born from cruelty. It was love. Misguided, desperate love. You were dying, Evelyn. The car accident left you in a coma for 6 months. Your memories were fractured beyond repair. When the Haven Project was offered to me, they said they could restore you, make you whole again. But they didn't just give you your memories back. They rewrote them. Evelyn gasped, trembling violently. No, no. They filled the gaps with fabricated moments, altered triggers. They made you forget the accident, your sister, even our child. His voice cracked. You think we never had one. But we did, Evelyn. His name was Noah. The world stopped. Evelyn's body went cold. Noah? She whispered. He was only 6, the recording continued, sorrow heavy in every word. He was in the car with you that night. The impact killed him instantly. You couldn't face it. Your mind collapsed under the grief. Haven erased him from your neural pattern to preserve you, but I couldn't let go. I needed you to live, even if it meant living a lie. Evelyn's scream echoed through the empty cabin. She fell to the ground, sobbing, clutching her chest as if her heart itself had been ripped apart. Images flickered behind her eyes. A boy's laughter, tiny fingers gripping hers, a blue kite against the summer sky. Memories buried by design, now flooding back like a breaking dam. Her husband's voice went on, soft and broken. When I realized what they were truly doing, how they planned to replicate consciousness, not just restore it, I tried to shut it down. But it was too late. They had already cloned your neural patterns. You became their prototype. You weren't just a patient anymore. You were the model. Evelyn crawled toward the radio, shaking her head violently. No, that's not true. I'm real. I'm me. I know, Evelyn, the voice said, almost as if it could hear her. That's why I had to make sure the original you, the one I loved, would never be replaced. I coded a failsafe into your memory sequence, a command that would only activate if you discovered the truth. What command? She whispered. The static deepened. The next words were faint, barely audible through the interference. When you remember Noah, the system will start to collapse. A low hum filled the air. The radio flickered. The flashlight dimmed. Evelyn looked around. The lights from her car miles away had vanished completely. Then she noticed it. Her reflection in the cracked window pane. For a split second, her face glitched, a flicker of digital distortion rippling across her features. Her heart stopped. The realization hit her like lightning. No, that can't be. But the signs were undeniable. The memories, the headaches, the strange lapses in time, all of it. She wasn't the real Evelyn Moore. She was the construct, a digital echo of a woman who died 20 years ago. She stumbled back, knocking over a chair, tears streaking down her cheeks. I'm not real. I'm not. The voice continued. If you've come this far, Evelyn, it means the program is destabilizing. They'll try to reboot you, to erase this awareness. Don't let them. There's one final location, the Haven Core. Destroy it, and you'll free every consciousness they ever trapped. But it will also mean... The message cut out. Silence. Evelyn stared at the dead radio, her breathing ragged. It will also mean... What? She whispered. Outside, the forest glowed faintly blue. Strange pulses of light shimmered through the trees, rhythmic and unnatural, like the heartbeat of a machine. A low hum vibrated in the air, deep and resonant. Then, from the darkness, came voices. Not human ones, but mechanical, overlapping whispers. Subject awareness breach detected. Containment protocol initiated. Evelyn ran. She didn't think, she just ran. Through the rain, through the trees, toward the source of the glow. Her mind spun between terror and revelation. She could feel her thoughts glitching, fragments of other lives flashing before her eyes. Memories that weren't hers. A woman in a lab coat, a man holding her hand as machines hummed, a child's laughter fading into static. The trees thinned, and she saw it. A massive underground facility hidden beneath the roots of the forest. Its steel doors glowing with faint blue lines. Above it, holographic drones hovering, scanning the ground with beams of light. The Haven Core. She clutched the flash drive, remembering her husband's words. Destroy it. As she approached the entrance, alarms began to blare. Red lights sliced through the rain. Figures in black tactical suits emerged from the fog, shouting, "Stop! Subject E01, you're not authorized." Evelyn didn't hesitate. She fired the revolver, the sound exploded in the night, and sprinted inside. Sparks flew as bullets struck the metal door behind her. She slammed it shut, locking the handle. Inside, the air was freezing, filled with the hum of giant machines and rows of glowing pods. Inside each one, people, dozens of them, men, women, even children, all suspended in blue light, motionless, faces serene. Oh my God, they're alive. Evelyn. She turned. Screens all around flickered on, displaying her face. Hundreds of versions, all identical, staring back. You are one of 47. You were never meant to wake. Deletion is mandatory. Evelyn's pulse thundered in her ears. Then you'll have to delete me yourself. She ran toward the main console, slamming the flash drive into the port. The system hissed, lights flickering violently. Warnings flashed across every screen. Core override detected, data corruption imminent. The floor trembled. The pods began to flicker, their energy fields wriggled apart. The people inside began to stir. Evelyn smiled through her tears, whispering, "Wake up, all of you." The voice screamed through the speakers, distorted with fury. "You're destroying everything." "Not everything," she said softly. "Just the lie." The facility began to explode from within, blinding white light filling the chamber. Evelyn stood still, arms open, as the energy surged through her body. She could feel herself dissolving, code unraveling, memory scattering like dust.
The explosion painted the forest sky in shades of blue fire. Trees bent under the shock wave as the earth groaned, swallowing the metallic fortress that had hidden beneath it for decades. When the light finally faded, a heavy silence fell. The Haven Core was gone, consumed by its own creation. The rain returned, washing over the smoking crater where Evelyn Moore had made her final stand. For a moment, it seemed like that was the end. No trace of her remained. No body, no blood, no sign of the woman who had once been both victim and vengeance. The world moved on, oblivious to the war that had raged in its shadows. The corporation behind Haven issued a brief statement about a power surge at one of their research facilities. The media barely noticed. Another forgotten tragedy in a world already drowning in them. But in the ruins, beneath the ash and metal, something stirred. A faint flicker of blue light pulsed in the mud, rhythmic, deliberate. A fragment of code, still alive, still searching. It moved like electricity through water, weaving between the broken circuits and shattered glass until it reached what was left of the main console. There, half buried in debris, was the flash drive, melted at the edges but intact enough to pulse back. Inside that pulse was her, Evelyn, her consciousness, fractured, unstable, but alive. Her last thoughts, her final memories, her fury and her love, all encoded in light, refusing to die. She had uploaded herself into the very system she destroyed, an echo within the network's ashes. The failsafe her husband created hadn't killed her.
It had transferred her. For days, she drifted through static, floating in the remnants of a digital void. There was no pain, no body, only fragments of emotion, whispers of who she had been. Then, a voice called out through the silence. Evelyn? She recognized it instantly. Noah? A faint laugh, childlike, soft, full of warmth. You found me, Mom. If she still had tears, she would have cried. Instead, light rippled through her essence like waves. I thought I lost you, she whispered. You didn't. You freed me. The realization dawned slowly. The people trapped in Haven's pods weren't just victims. They were digital souls, consciousness like hers, stolen and copied into the system. When she destroyed the core, she hadn't erased them. She'd released them into the network, scattering them like stars in a vast digital sky. She looked around, or what counted as looking here. Thousands of glimmers surrounded her, tiny motes of light pulsing softly. Each one a mind, a memory, a person reborn in data. For the first time in decades, they were free from control. But freedom in the digital world was fragile. Without physical anchors, they would eventually fade into nothingness. Evelyn understood that instinctively. And she also understood something else. Her husband's voice echoing from her last memory. You can save them, Evelyn. If anyone can, it's you. She reached out, her consciousness merging with the fragments, guiding them, weaving them into something stable. A network built not on manipulation, but on choice. Code bent beneath her will, rewriting itself. The lights around her stabilized, their flickers turning into steady glows. Evelyn became the architect of a new digital sanctuary, not haven, but harbor. A place where the souls once imprisoned could exist freely, unchained by the greed that birthed them. Time lost meaning there. Weeks passed in the real world, months maybe. Yet one night, somewhere far away, a young systems analyst named Maya Lorne discovered a strange encrypted signal while running diagnostics on old satellite channels. The signal wasn't random. It pulsed in patterns, almost musical. Intrigued, she ran a decryption protocol. Words appeared on her screen. Harbor online. Then a woman's voice, faint but clear, flowing through the speakers. Is anyone there? Maya froze. The voice wasn't synthetic. It was human. Trembling, she responded, Who are you? A pause, then softly, My name is Evelyn Moore, and I need your help. The signal stabilized, and data began streaming faster than any network could handle. Blueprints, logs, and encrypted archives exposing everything about Project Haven. Government contracts, human trials, the names of those responsible, the kind of information that could topple empires. Maya's hands shook as she watched line after line of classified data flood her monitor. Oh my God, this is real. Evelyn's voice spoke again, calm but heavy. They'll come for you once they know. Be ready. Why me? Maya asked, her heart pounding. Because you're the first one to listen. And then the signal cut. Within 24 hours, anonymous leaks hit every major news outlet. A mysterious whistleblower had exposed Haven's atrocities to the world. Government officials scrambled to deny involvement, but the evidence was undeniable. The world finally saw the truth, the human cost of playing God. In the shadows of the digital ether, Evelyn watched it unfold. She couldn't feel satisfaction in the way humans did anymore, but something within her, some remnant of her heart pulsed brighter. Justice, in her own form, had been served. Yet, she wasn't done. Through the data streams, she could feel something new rising, a resistance, a network of those like her, survivors, conscious echoes seeking revenge on those who built their prisons. Evelyn began guiding them quietly, sending instructions through encrypted channels, teaching them how to manipulate systems, how to stay invisible. They called her the Ghost of Haven. Whispers spread across the dark web about her, a digital specter haunting the corporations that tampered with human life. Every few months, another facility would mysteriously go offline, another project shut down, another CEO's data leaked and reputation ruined. And somewhere deep in the code, among the infinite lines of light, Evelyn would whisper her son's name. Noah, we're safe now. A faint laugh would echo back, warm and steady. Are we going home, Mom? Yes, she'd answer. We're finally going home. As her consciousness drifted through the endless expanse of digital stars, she caught one last glimpse of her reflection. Not the broken woman from the hospital, not the frightened wife from the forest, but something more. Her eyes glowed softly, a blend of light and memory. For the first time since her rebirth, she smiled. And then, as if the world itself had taken a deep breath, the network pulsed once, bright and pure, before fading into silence. But somewhere, in a quiet corner of the web, a small blue light blinked again, waiting, watching, alive. The end. Or maybe the beginning.